Hello and welcome to
Absolute Game Off.
Nerd! We are your non-geek, non-nerd hosts, Salt and Pepper, here to argue about a subject that shouldn't even be argued with. But Rohan, why are we here today?
We're here to talk about, does Star Wars suck? A hot button topic. And I do think, in previous weeks, we've kind of done more of like an open forum discussion. Today will be probably definitely a bit more of a debate between JP and I. JP, of course, obviously you can tell wearing the t-shirt there is on the pro Star Wars side. I am on the Star Wars sucks side, but I'll explain that a little bit. But first off, Noah, what's happening, brother? Thanks for joining us. I know you're a big Star Wars guy. You and I are talking about this since I posted the thumbnail. So interested to hear your comments. Real quick, before we get into it, though, I do want to note, obviously, as I'm sure many of you are, the next two following weeks, obviously with the holidays, Christmas being on Wednesday, New Year's Day being on Wednesday. Obviously, today's Tuesday, but for the following weeks, we'd be on Wednesdays. We won't have a show because we'll obviously have family obligations and whatnot going on, as I'm sure many of you will as well. Looks like Erwin's here too as well. We got another. I may be running pretty low with friends here tonight on the Star Wars suck side, but let's hear it. But let me just broker my side first in this. So what I want to start with is that I want to make it very clear that as a child, when I saw the original 3 Star Wars, I was absolutely captivated, just like probably every single person in this hobby was that watched it as a kid. My love for the original 3 films has not changed. I still will watch those. I love them, and they are excellent. My beef is everything else that has come since, and we'll obviously get into that. But JP, kind of why don't you lay out your position to start?
I, like yourself, was captivated by the original trilogy. I was born in the 70s when the first one actually, May of 77 is when the first one came out. I was born a couple months later. When the final trilogy, or excuse me, the prequels ended in 2005, my son was born, my first kid. So we spanned the Star Wars arc for those 40 some years until, again, they went further out into the Star Wars world. But I view Star Wars like my favorite team. And some years they're bad, some years they're good. And what made you a fan was something they did at one point. And the reason we're fans of Star Wars, or you were, was the original. And not every movie is going to be the same. You can't really make lightning in a bottle happen over and over again. And Star Wars is a franchise that has made, in my opinion, lightning in a bottle numerous times. And it's just like you have to stick with your team. And the minute you bail, then you never were a fan originally. So that's just, I think it's hard to argue with a billion-dollar franchise or multi-billion-dollar franchise that has theme parks and, its own language. Well, maybe that's Star Trek, but pretty close.
Let me ask you this, and as I have said before, I actually do think that point you make there with it being like your favorite sports team that you ride or die with, regardless of the success of the team, I actually do think is a very valid and very good argument in the pro Star Wars camp. Let me ask you this question though. In that light, when your sports team sucks, do you still A, watch every game, and or B, would you spend money to go see them in person?
You are a season ticket holder of the Seahawks, right?
I am, yes.
How long have you been a season ticket holder?
Since 2004, so over 20 years now.
Okay, and how many of those years were good years and how many were bad years? Probably more good than bad.
No, I know. More. There were more. I mean, when I grew up in the 90s, the Seahawks were horrendous. Since I became a season ticket holder in 2004, they've been a competitive team and they've made the playoffs more years than they've not. So it's hard for me to complain. So yeah, but I know myself, like I'll use the Mariners, for example, like the Mariners who I've watched it as well. Like I was so into the Mariners, like Ken Griffey Jr. was my favorite player, but like from 2001 to 2023, they never made the playoffs. Like it definitely wears on you, and it gets to a point, 15 years in, you're like, okay, am I really going to watch these guys just suck again? Like it takes its toll. And that's kind of where I get with Star Wars. And I will say too, my love of the original 3 movies is so strong that with the track record that they have had, I still give everything Star Wars related a chance. That doesn't mean I finish everything, right? Like I even watched the first 2 episodes of Acolyte, which obviously, again, I'm sure there are some people that liked it, but for the most part, that was a kind of widely hated. And I mean, the second season's already even been canceled. And now we have Skeleton Crew. I just have not had the time to get around to check it out, but it is on. I will definitely at least watch an episode.
I have to tell you, going back, like you mentioned, Ken Griffey Jr., and I was a huge fan of Griffey back in the 90s. I'm a Pirate fan, Pittsburgh guy, Penguins, Steelers, Pirates, and I didn't grow up in the 70s. Like I said, I grew up in the late 70s, so I don't really remember the Steelers winning their Super Bowls. I remember seeing the preview for Return of the Jedi in the theater, and it's a scene I'd never seen again. So whatever they preview way back, whatever, how many years ago it was, never showed up again. But I remember seeing that one in the preview, and then the movie in the theater, and then obviously the VHS of the other 2. So, it's kind of like when the steel curtain ended, there was a lull for that team for a number of years. They didn't do much in the 80s, AFC Championship appearance, and then the 90s, they had a resurgence, no Super Bowls, and then again in the 2000s, they had another resurgence at that point. But really, to go back and be that 70s steel curtain will never happen again. Patriots, they'll never have Tom Brady and that Belichick team again. Seattle with Ken Griffey, they're just, those things are hard to do again, hard to replicate. And so that original trilogy is hard to do, but that made you the fan initially. And even though the Pirates suck for 20 plus years, I go to Pirates games here and there. I root for them when I have a chance. I'm not a baseball guy because I kind of take the summer off from sports. But when baseball playoff starts, if the Pirates are in it, I'm going to watch it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. 100%. Like when the Mariners made the playoffs 3 years ago now, I was fully back in. And now my son's into it. So we are watching. They've been a little bit more, but they haven't made the playoffs.
Like family. When you have,
I agree. I think that's a great. Again, like I said before, I think that is the best argument I've seen when it comes to defending Star Wars. I do want to think I had this comment earlier, but I do think it's funny. No, this is just a sign of how young you are, right? First movie ever watching was Attack of the Clones. As a quick aside, I will say, so I'm sure you were probably I feel like most kids do this. Like, you remember when like a movie you loved would play on TV and then you would record it. That way you would have that movie.
Oh, yeah.
I always remember as a kid, for whatever reason, Return of the Jedi played often. So I recorded Return of the Jedi, and that was the one we always, like, Empire Strikes Back and A New Hope, compared to Return, like, never played on like actual regular, like, non-cable TV. So I never had a recording of those. But I remember I consistently rewatched Return of the Jedi. I absolutely love the original 3. But since the original 3, let's just kind of go down the list. And I'm just curious to just say, like, good or bad in your opinion on each of these.
Let's start off with, so Star Wars comes out 77, 80, 83, right?
Yeah.
Huge box office movies.
Excellent. Love them. Absolutely love all 3.
There was a Star Wars Christmas special somewhere mixed in there that sucked.
I've never seen that. I've heard of it. I've never heard of it. I've never seen it. Sorry.
It was something about the Wookiees were involved. If you go back and try to find it on YouTube, it is kind of corny. But if you think about it, it became such a culture, I don't know what the term would be.
Like a cult classic kind of thing?
Cult classic in the sense that it became mainstream to where you'd see them on various TV shows on Saturday night and whatnot. So it became popular to bring into SNL, Saturday Night Live, the news, baseball games, whatever. So it became part of the culture at that point. And then really the next Star Wars movie, and I don't know if you ever saw this one, was Jesus, I can't remember the name of it. And someone there's really no one on right now, but I mean, if there was one about a young family that crashed on Endor with a young daughter and an older brother. Yeah, it's
heard of this.
I remember watching it like it was like I'll send it to you, but it was like Saturday night special, like ABC or CBS, and the movie, like the show freaked me out. It's like a 2 hour long movie on TV, and essentially this family crash landed on Endor or something, and they were trying to find their way, and the Ewoks helped them out because of the popularity of the Ewoks. They made a little TV special with Ewoks and this young little cute little girl and older brother. And there was a scene where like they're on Endor and the brother's getting a drink of water in this little pond, and the pond like sucks you in, and he got sucked into the pond, and he could look up like he's underneath ice, but it wasn't ice, and he couldn't get out. And like that kind of gave me nightmares as a kid for a while because I was probably Caravan of Courage, Ewok. That's what it is.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Noah's coming through.
Yep, thank you. So that one was like, I wanted to see as a kid Luke Skywalker continue kicking ass like I expected him to do. And they came out this Caravan of Courage, and Luke wasn't even in it, not the main characters, and that was it. And pretty much died off from probably 85 until they re-released the special editions in 1997. So
he looked it up. He looked it up. All right. So then, past that. So then first one we got was when I was in high school was Phantom Menace. I mean, for me, I feel like that is a pretty universal bad.
Well,
in terms of.
Did you see it in the theaters?
Yes.
Did you see it the opening night?
No, I did not see it opening night.
Okay,
I imagine if you saw it opening night, you would have said it was amazing just because of like you've waited so long. Yeah, exactly. It's just something new in that world.
The Steelers in 2005 is when it comes out, right? That's the year the Steelers won a Super Bowl again, 25 years later. So it's like almost that gap, and so it's like you're now you can witness it in person as an adult to see it in the theater. So it was fun to see it in the theaters.
Yeah, and I totally respect that, but I'm talking about objectively as a film, good or bad.
Okay, you watched the pod race scene. It's fucking cool as hell.
Again, there are, even in all the bad movies, there are great scenes, but as a movie, as a whole, is it a good movie?
As a whole, I'm going to say overall, it wasn't a great movie. It was a good movie, but it wasn't a great movie.
Okay.
I'll tell you.
Pod race scene's amazing, and the Darth Maul lightsaber scenes were probably the best lightsaber scenes we've ever seen.
Correct. Ray Park, who played Toad in X-Men, he was Darth Maul. He's a badass. So yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you're saying, well, it sounds like you're more on the fence of like it was fine.
It was like it was going back and seeing it, and it was like Jar Jar sucked. Parts of it sucked. Qui-Gon was cool. Ben Kenobi, but my son and just like Noah love the prequels that we're going to get into. Like legit won't even argue, won't even like even consider the fact that the originals are the better one. Like no way he even, he would even think to take that side of it. He just loves it.
I'm curious. Noah, if you're still there, answer that question. Do you love the prequel 3 better than the original 3 as someone that watched the prequel 3 first?
That's a good point. Dual Fates.
Oh yeah. Music, excellent. Not going to argue there. But no, let me know if you like the prequel 3 better than the original 3. Okay.
So then wait. Going back to it, prequel Phantom Menace, good starting point for what was going to be you expected to see next. Okay.
Okay. I will say bad movie, but that's fine. This is what we're here for. Okay, so then Attack of the Clones. Again, I think bad. Some great scenes. I mean, Yoda lightsaber battle for the first time was incredible to see. I saw it in the theater. I was hyped when I saw that.
When he was flipping around.
Yeah, when he was flipping around against Count Dooku, fucking rocked. But like,
that was retarded. That was
like
dumb.
this. You didn't like it. Okay. I'm a big Yoda guy, so maybe I'm biased there. But then like all the Anakin Padme scenes were just like, my God, this is awful. So what do you think what do you think about, you agree? Okay. All right. Yep. So we have consensus on Attack of the Clones. The third one would be Revenge of the Sith. Mm-hmm. From an entertainment, Noah and I were talking about this again. Noah and I talked about this once. Noah and I would talk about this the other day. Revenge of the Sith is a entertaining movie. Like there is a lot of cool things that happen in there. I do think it is a very flawed movie. Like some things that just don't make sense. Like for example, when, and you can even kind of talk about this, is similar to same thing that happens in Attack of the Clones when all the Jedi get kind of mowed down in that stadium. But so when they realize that Palpatine is the Sith Lord, Mace Windu goes with two other Jedi, Kit Fisto being one, I can't remember the name of the other one, who are on the Jedi Council. They're Jedi Master. I mean, these are three of the most powerful Jedi ever known to the history of Star Wars. They go to arrest Palpatine. Once he finally admits he's the Sith, he pulls out his lightsaber, and Palpatine immediately just randomly stabs the other two besides Mace Windu like they're fucking chumps. And it's just like that scene pissed me off so much. I'm like, what is going on? Like, how did those two guys just get slain? Especially like Kit Fisto has like this whole lore about him, about how he's a badass. And like this old man just was just like, I hated that.
Yeah.
But again, like I love the opening scene when they're in the little jets and they're chasing General Grievous. I even love the lightsaber battle with General Grievous. Again, Yoda facing Palpatine was awesome. And then the final lightsaber battles between Anakin and Obi-Wan are awesome.
See, my question to Noah is, did he know that Darth Vader? I mean, did he know that Darth Vader was going to turn in? That Anakin was going to turn on Darth Vader? Like, did everyone knew that? So I didn't find that movie to be emotional, in my opinion, because I knew it was going to happen.
That's a good point. Like, we obviously knew that Anakin would become Darth Vader because we saw the original three. If you've seen it for the first time, was those prequel movies. Did you have any idea that Anakin was going to turn as dark as he did? That's a good question. It's a good way to good question for those that saw the prequel.
Because it didn't make it emotional for me because I knew it was going to happen.
Because you expected it, yeah. And I thought the scene where he came up as Darth Vader and was like, like that was just corny. Like corny as hell, yeah.
I didn't like the fact that he came up like yelling like that, and he yelled, "Where is Padme?" Like, it didn't sound right coming out of Darth Vader's mouth. He should have said something like, "Where is she?"
Yeah.
Like, and referenced her in a far off kind of way, because they ruined that character for me, Darth Vader. Like, growing up, Luke Skywalker was my favorite. I was Luke Skywalker for Halloween the one year. My aunt made me that cloak that he had in Return of the Jedi. I had the big lightsaber from back in the day. And Luke Skywalker was my hero. Later on in life, Boba Fett became my favorite. And then lately, it's been more Darth Vader. I'm not sure why. Maybe it went to the dark side. But they pretty much ruined Darth Vader for me from those, or tried to, with those prequels.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So David, here's my boy David. He's jumping on. He says, what we're talking about, Revenge of the Sith, is my second favorite to A New Hope. And so, David, what I would say too is, like, I find Revenge of the Sith is a very entertaining movie, but it is a very flawed movie. And two other things I just didn't like about Revenge of the Sith, like, for someone like Darth Vader is, if you were to have a debate on who are the greatest villains in film of all time, Darth Vader is 100% in that top 5 discussion, right? And so when you look at the prequels as kind of the origin of that character, I did not love like the scene when like he and Palpatine are at like that like space opera, and he's like, I learned how to bring people back from the dead. It's like, it was just so contrived with like how that mode, like, I have to say, like. And then like the scene where he like slayed the Wookiee, or not the Wookiee, but that village of people
Sand people.
It was just all just like this. Like, you could have done that origin so much better. I felt like it was so disappointing for Darth Vader fans.
Darth Vader was a badass in the original movies, and again, he was a scary dude, and he became one of my favorite just because of the way he carries himself. They made him to be such a pussy.
Yeah,
Anakin, I hated it to that part of it. I could have done without the other two movies, because whenever I listened to the original movies and I listened to what Obi-Wan talked about sitting in his Obi-Wan's hut and said, he was the best star pilot in the galaxy, your father Anakin.
Yeah.
And so I'm picturing Anakin to be in that orange X-wing outfit, flying X-wings, like Top Gun, right?
Yep.
And then when he lands, he's in that black outfit that Luke had in Return of the Jedi, not a fucking robe, like he's, you know, a monk. And so I pictured him be like the Green Berets, these Jedis, not like monks and whatnot. And they made him sound like he was such a badass, and they never showed any of his fights, like star fights or X-wing fights, in those movies, like bits and pieces of it. And people have told us, and I haven't watched the Clone Wars cartoon, but apparently they showed more of Anakin as a badass cartoon wise, and I think that's what was missing, because one, he was supposed to be the best star pilot in the galaxy, which was shown in pod racing but never really shown again in the other two movies.
Yeah,
And
the only
he
other
big-
scene you have him flying is that opening scene against chasing Grievous, right? That's the only other him
but he's
piloting.
always in like a small jet fighter, we'll call it. He wasn't X-wing. It wasn't like the Armada going after. Like, I picture the Clone Wars to be, again, fighting, I guess, clones in a sense, but like star fights like you saw in the original movies, like a bunch of X-wings going in there. The Kessel Run.
Those scenes from the original movies I enjoyed those even more than like lightsaber battles. Like those to me as a kid were, because I thought X-wings were like the coolest like jet I have ever seen. I was very into like jets and building those with my Legos, and so I thought X-wings were just like the pinnacle. And so like those starfighter battles, I was like, oh, those were the best.
And they should have been more of those in the original, because that's how they made Anakin sound. And then his fights, like, yeah, he beat up Dooku, he beat up Grievous, I think, if he did.
No,
but
Obi-Wan did.
Obi-Wan beat up Grievous, but I think he fought Grievous. That's how he lost his armor. Was that, I can't remember, but essentially they made him a whiny bitch. And I didn't like, they could have made him tougher. You've seen villains become villains in other movies, not have to become from being a pussy.
I agree. I don't think anyone's gonna argue like that. Not to mention, like, the actor Hayden Christensen that plays Anakin just has that whiny bitch vibe, and that's definitely part of it. So like, I totally feel you on there. But let's move on to Clone Wars. Noah's been talking about it. He says some of the best Star Wars content. So JP, I know you haven't seen Clone Wars, but if you remember when we had Bianca on, she talked about a kind of cheat sheet for Clone Wars where it highlighted all the important episodes you needed to watch in Clone Wars, and you would get everything. So I actually watched those in my free time here and there. They're short episodes, so you can throw one on, 20 minutes, knock it out. My personal opinion is that the Clone Wars were kind of lame. There you go. The Anakin mask. You should wear that the rest of the show, by the way. But I thought it's a show. It's made for children. I have nothing against animation, but it is an animated show made for kids. And so with that, like, I just found it very boring. I know a lot of people will dispute that against me, but that's fine. I also don't accept the argument that people were like, oh, when they kind of retconned everything in Clone Wars, it makes the original prequel now good. Like, to me, that's just like, right. It's kind of like the same thing when people talk about like the MCU when it's like with the multiverse. It's kind of lame, like, because no one's ever dead or no one's ever this, because you can always just multiverse yourself out of a problem. Like, to me, that's not a valid argument.
This mask my son wore as Anakin with the whole outfit, and it was creepy as hell because the eyes come right through it. And it looks creepy as hell.
Hey, it looks like almost like you're gonna go rob a bank kind of thing.
He looked like Anakin back in the day, but
yeah.
But I mean, you shouldn't have to rewatch or have to fix certain things about. If it was good in the beginning, it shouldn't have to be retcon. That one of the things that I don't want to get too far off this one, but I think Lucas did too much pissing around with the original movies for those special releases that screwed up certain scenes, but we can get back to that in a minute. But I want to say one last thing about Revenge of the Sith. That battle between Anakin and Obi-Wan was just trash. Like,
at the end? You talking about the lava
terrible.
planet?
Yeah,
you don't like it?
I don't like it at all. Like, I felt that it could have been a much better scene. Like, why would he flip over top of him like that and get his fucking legs chopped off? Like, it didn't. I felt like you could have made that battle on that lava planet and like on a bridge, and they're going back and forth, kind of like in the Darth Maul battle, and lava's flying everywhere, and lava flies up, and it hits Anakin like in the arm, and he takes him out for a second. That's how Obi-Wan gets his arm or something. Like, it isn't because Obi-Wan was better or he made a dumb move. It was like a circumstance that happened, and it could have been much more dramatic in that regard. Besides him sitting down there and doing some stupid ass flip, and then getting his legs cut off and laying there and then getting burned from the lava coming up.
I think personally that the lightsaber battle in itself is great. I do agree it culminates or climax or whatever. It finishes poorly because you have that scene where like he jumps up and in one swoop he cuts off an arm and both legs. Yep. Right, which is quite extreme.
Now that's why he's the robot. I took care of it all in one swipe.
Exactly, and then again going back to the kind of whiny bitch theme, when he's then laying on the ground, he's like, "I hate you." It's just like that is so bad. Like it was so bad. Like it was a great fight up until that. So I can agree with you on that.
And think about the fight with Luke and Darth Vader in Empire Strikes Back. Badass fight, right?
Yeah, and he got his hand cut off.
Hands cut off, and then he falls down a ravine or
he jumps down it, right?
Jumps down. I won't join you. I'm going to jump and kill myself. Yeah. Then he's down there and he gets rescued. Like for Anakin to get his legs and arm cut off and tell I hate you, and then they come pick him up. Like he should have been like somehow fell down a cliff and Obi-Wan leaves and then Emperor comes and gets him, so it doesn't look stupid and corny like that. Just a better take to end that scene. But I thought it could have been so much better because you make this guy out to be the best star pilot, the chosen one, and again he had to be flawed. He had to have this what would you call it, arc, to rescue the Force or whatever. But man, they just made him look like such a
I agree. The entire origin story, we'll say, of Darth Vader was super lame for what we have of Darth Vader in the original three. Like I said, we talk about a top 5 movie villain of all time. Darth Vader is there. And not to mention, like in the original 3, right? You have that arc where he returns back to Luke and helps Luke beat Palpatine, right? It's excellent. Like I loved it, but like you don't get the same satisfaction of like how he became Darth Vader. Yes, Noah, keep commenting. Let us know what else there's more to say. We're going to keep going, but let's do that. So then at this point, I think it's safe to say, so now Disney has purchased Star Wars from George Lucas, and they're going to,
for how much?
$4 billion?
No, $6 billion.
$6 billion. I mean, like, there's no doubt it is a.
Does it suck? No.
There is no doubt about that. It is a lucrative franchise. There's no doubt about that. However, I will say, I will get to Acolyte, but like it is now at a point where we're at a point where franchises, like before, even when it was bad, like it still made $1 billion kind of thing. Like I think they've struck out enough times that now people are like, okay, no, I'm not doing this anymore. But anyways, we'll get to there. So, okay. So now we go to episode 7. What the hell is that called?
It's called, The Force Awakens.
Force Awakens, yes. Okay. So.
This is not that. This is The Last Jedi I'm wearing right now.
Yeah. So when we talk about 7, 8, and 9, I will preface it like I did not like them. I only watched them once each. So I don't know them as detailed as I know the other 6. But my problem with Force Awakens, it is literally the exact same storyline as A New Hope, right? You got a
100%.
kind of you got like a kind of orphan child on a desert planet who is the New Hope, and they're gonna fight a rebellion where the enemy has a planet-sized weapon. Like I mean, like it's so literally on point. Like it is like how like this can't be real. Oh, here we go. Now Noah's got beef with the new trilogy. So you agree there? Force Awakens, no good.
I do.
Anything you want to add before we move on to the next one?
I liked Force Awakens. Again, it was a great jumping off point for that franchise that could have gone somewhere. J.J. Abrams, I think, did a great job directing a movie that was very similar to the first one, like you just said. And I think that was the reason to bring in new people. You know, it was 2005. We're talking, well, when did they end? 05 was the first one. Had to be maybe, 10 years later that The Force Awakens came out. I don't know exactly, maybe 2019. So brought people back in, that same feeling again. Force Awakens, Phantom Menace.
It brings the nostalgia. I would agree with that, which Noah says there.
So you got Rey, you got what's his name, the stormtrooper guy that changed over, Rey, and
the guy that played by the black guy. I don't remember his name. Finn. No, Finn's the pilot.
Finn, and then you had the pilot.
No, Finn is the pilot, right?
No, Finn is the stormtrooper. God Almighty.
Okay. Yeah, the guy played by Oscar Isaac is the pilot.
Correct. Good three cat Rey, Finn.
Yeah, good three. Good trio. I mean, that's your original Leia, Luke, and Han.
And then you have Poe Dameron. Thank you.
Oh, there you go.
And you have Han Solo's in it. Chewbacca.
Yep.
The Millennium Falcon. The cool ass scene with those like fucking whatever those octopus looking spinny things that were killing everyone in that big ship. You remember that scene where the Rey and Finn were in hiding in the Millennium Falcons. They had stolen it, and Han came and got it back. And then those people, two different pirates came, and they wanted this particular alien that like eats everything. And that was a cool little battle right there on that scene. You know, overall, I think it had a lot of good jumping off points that could have been better. And J.J. Abrams didn't direct the next two movies. I don't think he did.
No, isn't that Ryan Johnson or something?
And so the next one was terrible, but Force Awakens I thought was bring you back in the theater. We have a new Star Wars trilogy. It's just that feeling of, wow, what can we have now?
I mean, episode 8 of the 9, episode 8 has got to be the worst.
I would agree.
Like, it's so, and part of both in 8 and 9, they have this issue. One of the things that drives me crazy is Star Wars, right? When we talk about Jack Kirby, what was that line that Jack Kirby said that was famous for? He said,
I suck at everything.
No, but he said, my budget is limited by my imagination, and my imagination has no limits. Star Wars is the same concept in the sense that you are limited only by your imagination in terms of like what kind of story you can write, right? Like we've essentially made anything possible. And so like in 8, like it absolutely drives me crazy when so Ryan Johnson did 8 and then J.J. Abrams did 7 and 9. Yep. But it drove me crazy in 8 when they're like, okay, we need to go to this like gambling planet, and there's a coder there that is the only one in the universe that can solve this problem for us, right? And we're going to go get him. They go to the gambling planet. They get arrested. Their plan is foiled. They end up in a prison cell. Oh, and look at that. The one other guy in the entire universe that could do the same exact thing is Benicio del Toro, who's in that jail cell with him. It's just lazy writing. Mm-hmm. And then more importantly, the bigger beef I have with this is, right, Brandon and I were talking about this on our group thread, that you get to this point where people are like, oh, well, you know, Ryan Johnson wanted to make his Star Wars movie. And as far as I'm concerned, that's bullshit, right? He doesn't get to make his movie, right? Star Wars belongs to the legions of fans that have made the Star Wars culture and made it the multi-billion dollar. Like when you take on the responsibility of creating a Star Wars movie, you are the custodian of that IP, right? You are administering it to those that own it, who is the fan base. And so this whole like, oh, he wanted to make his own Star Wars movie. Like, no, fuck that. You don't get to fuck with the lore. You don't get to mess with like what's established, what's canon, like make up your own rules. That doesn't fly with me. And that's 8. And it's terrible.
Okay. 8 is terrible for one reason, but there are many other, but the main reason is Luke Skywalker is drinking milk from a nipple of some alien cow. ruined a childhood hero by having him do that stupid ass scene drinking that milk. Terrible. Pissed me off to no end.
Enough said right there. I think that sums it
None.
up right there.
You
Episode-
were so looking forward to seeing Luke Skywalker, and he hasn't aged well.
No,
You know,
no.
yeah, he is who he is. He's one of the greatest of that genre and that role that was so iconic. But he's done other great things with the Joker and some other animation stuff. But he didn't age well, and they didn't make him look any better, right? And the best one that showed Luke was the Mandalorian episode or season 4, which we get into
The
later
finale,
on.
season 2
finale. So that's the Luke we wanted to see. And again, we got an older version of Luke, but you were so excited to see him, and they were trying to find Luke, this whole thing about the map, and then you meet him and he's some old curmudgeon drinking, drinking milk from that teat. And I'm like, man, this is not how I envisioned him. But if you read Dark Empire, I think is with a comic from when Star Wars was dead from the mid 80s to the 90s until Dark Horse had the rights for the comics, and they came out with a couple of Star Wars comics that Marvel didn't own until down the road, because Marvel had them originally with the trilogies, the original trilogies, and then Dark Horse bought them because it was very unpopular at the point. And there's the first Star Wars comic that came out. I still have it today. I think it's called Dark Empire. And there's a scene in there where Luke Skywalker himself beats up, takes down 5 AT-ATs or something ridiculous with the Force.
Yeah.
And that scene in episode 8 was badass to that same scene in the comics. Almost as cool. So I know he wasn't there. In the comic, he's there, and he's just so powerful. He's able to take down these, using the Force, taking down these AT-ATs, which was cool as hell. That scene was pretty close to cool. And then you're like, oh, wait, he's not there. That's even cooler in a sense. Then he just gets so tired and dies. I'm like, what the hell? God, you ruined it. It was so awesome. And then, you redeemed his milk drinking episode. And then you have this end scene where he's fighting Kylo Ren. He beats the AT-ATs and all that stuff. And then he just drops over because he's so tired. I'm like, oh my God. So
yeah,
that ruined it there for me. I mean, there's a couple cool parts, which that was one of them. But it didn't save that movie, no.
Yeah. And then so moving on to episode 9. Episode 9, I think, is another one where we just have loads of lazy writing and just conveniently finding things to make the story work. Like again, you have that. There's an example of they need to smuggle aboard an Imperial ship, and Star Wars is a movie franchise where in every movie I feel like there's some component of smuggling going on, right? We have decades worth of smuggling going on. And in episode 9, they go, how are we going to get on this Imperial ship? And then the person goes, oh, I know. I have a coin that allows me access on any Imperial ship without question. And they're like, problem solved, moving on. And it's just like, God, I hate that. And it's just it's not to mention, we talked about these badass fight scenes with the lightsabers from the original 3, from the prequel 3. That scene with with Rey and who has what's the Adam Driver's character's name?
Kylo Ren.
Kylo Ren on it looks kind of like a battleship in the ocean kind of thing, where it's where in the original we're talking about with Ray Park's and for them they're just ha. It's how did we evolve to that crap? It's
yeah, well, the original actually had decent lightsaber scenes without any guys that were martial artists, and Ray Park was a martial artist, and that was the badass scene of episode 1,
yeah,
but it was replicated throughout those prequels, but not in the, what do we call them, the sequels, we'll say 7, 8, and 9. But there was the scene where Kylo Ren, I think this was in episode 8, whenever Kylo Ren and what's that, the bad guy before Palpatine, Snoke, he turns the lightsaber and then drives it right through the guy, that was a cool scene.
Yeah, that was cool.
And then when they fought the bounty guards or Crimson Guard, that was a cool scene with the two of them fighting together.
What's up, Akins?
And what's up, Atkins?
Not to mention though, our original complaint with Hayden Christensen being kind of like a whiny bitch. I actually love Adam Driver as an actor, but
Yeah,
I did not love
he was
Kylo
good
Ren.
as.
Like,
I thought he was good as Kylo Ren.
I mean,
He
I
had a
felt
great
like,
voice for
but like he fully played up that like spoiled stepchild kind of thing with
yeah.
being like Leia and Han's like son, and I didn't like that, especially for like the, it's supposed to be a villain on par with Darth Vader. I didn't enjoy that part. But then yeah, like so as Noah was saying, like then they brought Palpatine back.
Lazy
It
writing
was
again.
Yeah, it was all very just like, what is going on here? Again, an entertaining space battle at the end. But then it was just a weird movie to me.
It it had its parts. I didn't like the way it ended. They made Rey part of Palpatine's, related to her in some regard, but then I guess she's not a Skywalker, so the Skywalker legacy ends or something to that effect is what I guess ends that
Yeah.
movie. So she's gonna go here. Cool Darth Vader. Yeah, he was bitchy. Anakin was bitchy and just being a pussy in those prequels. Just I think that those movies, there was only a couple good scenes. The first movie was the best out of 7, 8, 9, just to lay the foundation. But then 8 and 9 had their particular scenes, but didn't carry well. I think Noah said later Abrams came back to fix what happened in 8 with number 9, and probably is too far gone at that point. But okay, so they screwed up that stuff. The move in and what Star Wars is missing, and what I believe they're going to go into next is going to be the entire universe of the galaxy that they can use for more cool shit. And the Mandalorian was definitely a success.
Well, wait, before we get to that, right? We've got to talk about Rogue One, and we got to talk about the Solo movie.
Okay, so Rogue One,
fantastic. I love that movie.
I gotta refresh my drink. Keep talking.
Yeah, Rogue One, fantastic movie. I think it's right up there. I put it right up there with the original 3. I think it's awesome. It's got excellent scenes. It brings back that Darth Vader badass villain that you got in the original 3. Love Rogue One. The Solo movie left a lot to be desired. So what do you say here? Though I did enjoy Last Jedi, I could see the heat. I did enjoy the battle at the end. It was pretty dope. Yeah. Rogue One, phenomenal, right? If they made Rogue One level movies as they pumped out these movies, man, I would be all back in on the franchise.
So Rogue One, we start like that. So
how many shirts you got here for tonight, JP?
I have brought a shirt for every 15 minutes.
Okay.
But this is the same one. I just was wearing this one.
Okay.
So Rogue One was badass. Again, it's a whole big galaxy you can use. You don't even use the same characters, and it's a great movie, in my opinion. I love Rogue One.
Love Rogue One.
Didn't even need any of the characters itself. You had Darth Vader at the end, which that scene was badass of him. Badass. I mean, again, love to see it. That's the Darth Vader we knew. Mm-hmm. You had, just these other characters that had no bearing on it, and you can start fresh without having to have them anyone related. And I thought it was just overall an awesome movie. I would have liked to see more lightsabers. So you had the guy who played in the Kung Fu movies. He was supposed to be Bruce Lee's instructor. Hitman or HP Man or something.
I don't know who that is.
Hitman, the guy who was the blind Jedi.
Oh yeah. The I forget that actor's name. But yeah, he was like in Last King of Scotland.
The Force is with me or something. He kept saying over and over again he's blind, and his buddy who was those two were pretty cool in that, but I would have loved to have seen them being more lightsabers as opposed to that stick he was using. IP Man. Yeah, it was a badass movie too. You should really watch IP Man, the first one. It's badass.
Okay.
But so he's in it, so he's great. Should have been more more lightsabers maybe, but I just thought the overall story was very compelling. Right. Yeah. So it kept you in the loop, and it was a great off-world, off-galaxy or inter-galaxy, non-related movie, which was how
it also tied to the original 3, which was great.
Correct. Solo, a lot of people don't like it, but I thought it was decent. I didn't love it, but I thought the guy who played him looked like Solo. He looked like
Yeah,
Han.
I had no problem. I had no issue with the casting.
I don't know why it hit at the wrong time. I think it was timing on that one. I think it was a cool, origin story for Han Solo. I didn't love it, but again, it isn't as bad as Revenge of the Last Jedi, Episode 8, freaking Revenge of the Sith. It wasn't as bad as those movies, in my opinion. It was just a good origin story.
Okay. All right. So then now we can kind of get into the show. So you were a fan of Mandalorian. I think The Mandalorian had some cool stuff. Obviously, the finale in season 2 was excellent with Luke Skywalker. My issue with The Mandalorian was that every single episode was the exact same formula, in the sense that Mando goes to said new planet, new village. There is some monster villain, gang of villains. That is attacking the village, and then he exchanges his help to defeat the villain for information to the next step, and then it goes to the next episode, repeats the same format, and over and over and over again.
Okay, so how many shows do you watch, like CSI Miami, that the same shit happens?
Well, exactly. I understand CSI Miami is watched by it has more viewers than any other show.
Not that it has more viewers. I'm saying
it's not a good show.
I'm not saying it's a good show. I'm saying that's the formula for a weekly series.
Yeah,
right? He's like a gunslinger going into a town, and he has to, fix the problem. It wasn't when it becomes a movie, will be a different story. But it was like a weekly serial type, like Kung Fu, D&D adventure format. Yeah, basically that's what it was, and it was great. I think the first seasons were great. The end of episode 2 or season 2 was by far I had chills watching Luke Skywalker.
Even I, who didn't enjoy Mandalorian, I had chills like that.
How did you not enjoy the first two seasons?
Like I said, like I said, after the formula was well known, it just got boring to me. I knew exactly what was going to happen. It was very predictable. I understand. I don't like those formulaic shows like CSI Miami, right? And so I do think that there is a way to it's only 8 episodes or 10 episodes. They have plenty of 10 episodes. 10 episodes is kind of the standard now for a show. We no longer have that 24 episode seasons like we did back in the 90s when it was on primetime cable. And so it's not a lot. You can mix it up. You can change the format and still maintain who the Mandalorian is, in my opinion. But Mandalorian, though, from a success standpoint, seems to have been a successful series. Noah's not happy with me. Again, no, I'm here on the Star Wars suck side. Okay, so then from there you got the Boba Fett show, which I thought was awful, absolutely terrible, just not a good show. What did you think of that?
I liked the Boba Fett show. I didn't think it was great, but I was a fan of Boba Fett.
Everyone's a fan of Boba Fett, but I just thought the show was so.
And bad. I just saw Boba Fett in Pittsburgh this week, and he walked right past me. The guy who played him.
Oh, the actor.
I was in the actors were in one section, signing autographs. He walked right past me. He's as tall as me or shorter.
Oh, right. I mean, it'd be cool to get a photo with him and that kind of thing. I would get that. I think the character is cool. I just think it was a poorly constructed show. And again, I saw it only one time when it came out. I don't remember the details of it, if I was to be honest. So I can't.
It basically got saved because episode 5 or something.
Was that when Luke was back in it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that saved it.
Okay. So what was after Boba Fett? Was that Ahsoka?
No, after that was Andor.
Andor. Okay. Andor, very well received. I was honestly a little bit bored. And here's something I will say that I know a lot of people won't agree with me on. I love the traditional Star Wars themes. I love the concept of the Jedi. I think it's one of the coolest things. And so when people talk about oh, it's great to get Andor where it's not about the Jedi and lightsabers and things like that, it's something different. I'm dude, I'm all in for more Jedi and more lightsabers. So Andor kind of bored me. What did you think on Andor?
I never finished the movie. I'd heard great things about Andor.
It's not a movie, it's a show.
I mean, the show. Started watching it, and I got all the way up to the prison scene where the prison was all like the floor
That's
was
where I
like.
got to. That's where I got to.
So I never finished it, but I did like it. But it kind of got old on me, and that was about the same time I think Obi-Wan came out, that series, and I did not like that one very much either.
No,
Andor was
Obi-Wan.
good, but I thought
Andor was well received, so I will, we can chalk it up to being good. And then I know there's a lot
again,
of hype for season 2 of
it's
Andor
great.
that's coming out soon.
It's great to go off into otherworldly things in the Star Wars universe because it's so huge that you can tell other stories to be compelling.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, but you're right. So then the next would have been the Obi-Wan show, which I'm with you. Very disappointed. And again, we come back to that what I talked about earlier, where I don't like when we have new stuff that comes out that rearranges what we've known and believed, right? Opening episode in Obi-Wan, we have a scene with a young Leia talking about how she knows Obi-Wan, her family knows Obi-Wan, blah, 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 blah. And it literally takes away from that whole scene of A New Hope where you have her, Obi-Wan, you're our only hope, blah, blah. Like, it literally takes away from. And like, I know you have the Star Wars hardcore fans that are like, well, if you actually look at the exact words she said, it's like, shut up. Like, I don't need a lawyer to, go through it term by term. Like,
say that she knew him beforehand.
Yeah, like Obi-Wan established that, in fact, she did know Obi-Wan, which, in my opinion, changes what we knew from episode 4, which I think is super lame.
Episode 4.
Yeah, episode 4 is A New Hope. A New Hope, the very first OG movie.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like she didn't. It wasn't like when she saw Obi-Wan, she gave him a big hug, given their relationship in Obi-Wan the series, right?
Yeah.
So she was younger and maybe she forgot. I don't know. But again, if you watch episode 4, when Obi-Wan and Darth Vader fight, he says, I was but their learner last time. Now I'm the master. And he then basically they fight to a standstill. Obi-Wan drops the sword and gets killed to become the Force ghost that he is. There's never an instance where they talk about them fighting prior to that.
Yeah.
Again, he says, the last time we met, I was but the learner. It doesn't talk, you cut my arm off, you cut my leg off, I got burned alive. All that shit that happened in episode 3 was never really talked about in 4, because I would be pissed if I'm Darth Vader and that shit happened, right? And then they apparently fought prior to that too.
Yeah, I mean, which we see in the Obi-Wan series.
Right, so I'm like, you're retconning this shit. It's not supposed to be that way. It wasn't like you shouldn't have done that.
Another classic lazy writing scene. I think it's in episode 1 or episode 2 where Obi-Wan's basically like trapped in that city and they've like stationed guards at all the transport locations. And then he meets the Indian Jedi, Kumail Namahaji.
Oh yeah.
Right. And he's like, well, we can't get out. They have guards everywhere. And he's like, but they haven't guarded the supply transportation centers. He's like, it's right there. And he like looks up at his side. It's right there. I'm just like, God, the fucking lazy writing just kills me. Like, again, we have an established storyline of smuggling, and here we are just like being lazy about it.
I have not seen this.
Oh, I've seen that. That's badass. Yeah, it's on YouTube. You could look that up. That's badass.
I should look it up.
Yeah. Okay, so then from the
Obi-Wan
that's where
show, there was
go ahead. I was just
saying
that
show probably shouldn't have been made.
Yeah, but the thing is what sucked was like the trailer for it was awesome, and I was like, "Oh, this show's gonna be sick," and it was definitely disappointing.
I mean, you didn't have to bring in Darth Vader. You didn't have to bring in Leia. You could have gone a whole different route with some other shit like the Mandalorian, and not involve any of those characters, because then you're retconning what you thought was the timeline.
Yeah, I mean, it could have even just been like, how did Obi-Wan get to where he was in episode 1? Like, we don't know anything about that, right? He's just there, right? It could have been a show about that. It would have been awesome, like an origin story for him. But anyways, after Ahsoka, in hindsight, there are definitely some things that when I look back, I'm like, okay, that was kind of lame. That was kind of dumb. But I enjoyed it when it was happening.
I agree.
Yeah. And then like this is also though where I kind of get lost. Like because we get again, this kind of goes back to like what was retconned in the Clone Wars. Like it's hard for me, and this is kind of again where I think Star Wars really kind of loses me, and I'm sure a lot of people, right? We have this character of Ahsoka who was Anakin's Padawan, right? Yet in the original, not in the original, sorry, in the prequel 3, we see Obi-Wan, or excuse me, we see Anakin go from child to Jedi Master to Darth Vader. Never was there ever mention of him having a Padawan or a character of Ahsoka. So it's like we have a character now that's created prior to him becoming Darth Vader. We don't see her then. And then now she's supposedly been in hiding, which I guess I understand. And now she's back on the scene after episode 6 or something.
4, 5, and 6. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, we should just have written the character because Ahsoka, the character in itself, is awesome. Like, we should have just made it its own thing.
Well, think about it. However old Ahsoka is, it was 18 years from the time of episode 3 until episode 4, A New Hope. And then probably another 10 years, somewhere in that range. So,
but at the end of episode 3, he's Darth Vader, and he's still Darth, right? Like, so like she would have been his Padawan before he became Darth Vader.
Correct, but whenever episode 3 ended and she went in hiding, you're talking 20 years.
Oh yeah.
Episode 4, and I think that's 10 years roughly. So we're talking almost 30 years before she comes out of hiding. Whenever all the stuff's happened with the Empire going down, she never comes out during that. So why was that the case? Kind of like the Eternals and Avengers. Where were they when shit was going down?
And that's and I think that's a super lame kind of thing. Like again, like you can surely like work your logic in and how it works. My point is just like it just would have been cleaner if they just made Ahsoka a new character that was its own.
But they made her in the Clone Wars in the series, the cartoon.
Yeah. And so maybe then what they should have done is honestly she should have maybe died in the Clone Wars or something. Right? But obviously she became a popular character, they want to continue using her.
She was fighting the Empire in Rebels. Which one is the Rebel set is my question.
I don't know.
I don't know that. So if no one wants to answer that question, because they retconned her into Clone Wars, the cartoon.
Exactly. So this is what I was getting at. So this is where it's like I'm lost in that because then in Ahsoka we also get the return of Admiral Thrawn, who's been like banished, but I'm like he was in the Clone Wars again, like, and then you have those new characters like Ezra Bridger and like I understand there are hardcore fans. They're like, in the Matrix, like putting all these storylines together. To me, as like someone that is a fan, but not maybe a super fan, I feel like, which is who the majority of people are, and I feel like this is where it gets really messy, and I can't even explain it.
Okay, so she's fighting them. That's fine, but then she's not around for New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, and doesn't come back till Mandalorian. So you're talking about a decade that she's lost for, and that's when the big battles happen. So again, I get it. They brought her in, they made her a character in the Clone Wars, to give Anakin a Padme, a Padawan, and kind of diversify a little bit, which I thought Rosario Dawson played Ahsoka.
She's great.
Awesome.
She's great.
And I think it's a great character for, a new age of Star Wars fans. But again, where was she in the movies? Like, if she was so important to Anakin, why wasn't she involved in episode 2? At all in episode 3, she was never there. I don't know though that Thrawn was part of Clone Wars. I don't know if Noah. He
said are all also from Rebels. Thrawn, okay. Ezra, Sabine. Sabine was the other one I was thinking of.
And they're not from Clone Wars, but they're from Rebels. So what's cool about that though is Thrawn is from the 7, 8, 9 book that was written by Timothy Zahn back in the 90s. And I had those books, and Thrawn was a badass, and Luke Skywalker was the head of the Jedi Council or the Jedi Order. Han and Leia had twins who he was training. It was a great series. That's what should have been done.
In
They, in
seven,
my
eight, nine.
7, 8, 9 should have been that. There never should have been 1, 2, and 3 because they did it so badly. They should have focused on the continuation of the Luke Skywalker movies.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you've talked about those books, they sound awesome, and I would actually be interested in reading those. It would have been cool, yeah, for that to been 7, 8, 9, like you said. So,
And so they're now Dave Filoni, who's in charge of Star Wars now, is bringing in some of that canon from those other stories, which is great for Thrawn. You know, he would be a cool character to come out in this. You know, where are we at now in the lore? We're after Return of the Jedi, but we're not yet at Rey, correct? That's pretty much where we're at now. With the Mandalorian is kind of set between Return of the Jedi and Phantom Menace, from what I gather.
I mean, like again, this is the timeline. It goes out of control for me.
I mean, that's something like put down on paper with, like we did with 22 movies from Marvel.
It's like what's that meme from the guy from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia? You know, where he's got the board, he's got all the strings going everywhere. Like that is what Star Wars has become to me with all of these different
but again,
storylines.
I think that's the great. Again, I'll say this part of it though. If 1, 2, and 3 came out originally, Star Wars would not be what it is today.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, if 7, 8, 9 came out first, Star Wars would not be what it's going to be today. Mando, Boba Fett, yeah, that's going to be cool when they make that movie.
Are we talking about is that the Mando and Grogu movie that's coming out?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So this is set, I think, between Return of the Jedi and Phantom Menace. So it's these storylines between there, and then there's going to be storylines set like 1,000 years in the past, and then another movie series with Rey going on after Revenge or The Last Jedi is what I think they're going to be doing. But again, if Star Wars would not be the franchise it is if we didn't have 4, 5, and 6.
100%. 100%.
I mean, I'm just saying, like the other 6 movies were not iconic by any stretch. They weren't legendary. They were a good continuation or a somewhat okay continuation of an original, legendary, awesome storyline that had such creativity that it could have gone anywhere and made toy lines, comic books, you name it, shirts, hats, whatever, Disney theme park, all that shit that it became. And you needed that 4, 5, and 6 to bring it to where it is. What they keep trying to do is reinvent the wheel with those characters and telling the same story. And what they need to do is more stories like Rogue One or Mandalorian, or there's an even cooler story that's set between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. And it's whenever Luke Skywalker was fighting this Prince Xi or Zai, I think is his name, who captured Han Solo's frozen in carbonite body, was trying to get Han Solo to Jabba the Hutt, and Luke Skywalker was trying to get him back before he got the Jabba the Hutt. And it's a book, it was a game. Like, it's a pretty cool storyline with Luke as a badass trying to get back his friend. And my thought is you can take that storyline and you can bring in Winter Soldier to play Luke Skywalker. He looked just like
Sebastian Stan.
And then just make new characters. And now you can go off into other parts and tell the story of Luke after Return of the Jedi by using Sebastian Stan. And he looks just like him, and start over with the same character, but in a whole different way that you never got to see Luke, and I think they can go that route too. Like they're going with Thrawn, with Mando, I think there's so much possibility.
There's definitely a lot of possibility. If we're going to kind of go in terms of where it goes, I think there's a lot of possibility of where it can go. And also I should say, I don't think we need to talk about The Acolyte. I don't think either of us really watched it. I watched the first 2 months. It sucked. It got canceled, but I think it's cool. I think we should end here on where do we want to see the franchise go? And I agree with you. I think what they should focus on is the future moving forward from, what's next is a great, expand on, focus on. I'm all in for that. I will say if they are to go more into more of a historical kind of aspect of the movies, the 2 movies I would love to see, whether it's 2 movies individually or it's a series of movies. My all-time favorite Star Wars character is Yoda. I would love to see a Yoda movie, how Yoda became Yoda, the Yoda origin story would be phenomenal. I would love to see it personally. Again, maybe I'm alone on that. And then 2, I would love to see the origin story of how the Jedi Order came about and got established. I think that would be a cool concept to check out. There you go. Because again, I personally think the concept of Jedi and Sith is very awesome. Like that's the kind of shit I'm into. And so I would love to see a series or a movie on how the Jedi became who they were. Or even in that light, like how the Sith became who they were. Like I'd be into that. But otherwise, yeah, I like focus on the future and, expand there. Don't intermingle all these different intersparsed timelines.
There is so much to be explored there that you can, like I was saying earlier, you don't need to tell the same old story again. First Jedi, yes, that's the movie set 1,000 years in the past.
Okay.
That movie. So I mean, that sounds like a cool concept again, but then Ezra Bridger, Ahsoka, they have their following, but it's kind of like, that hasn't caught on. We'll see what happens. Like I think Acolyte was trying to do that as well as have some new storylines with some new Jedi. It didn't take. I mean, again, that one Jedi looked kind of like a badass, whatever that mask was he had, but the whole storyline pretty much died out.
I think a lot of people also had anger with Acolyte because, again, it kind of ruined or fucked with kind of established lore in the sense that, like, when we talk about Anakin and or Luke, they talk about like the one kind of messianic being that was like made by the Force, and then the Acolyte introduces 2 new characters that are twin girls that are also now conceived by the Force. And it's like, no, we've already set this establishment of 40 plus years that there's one and it's Anakin. And now you're saying that there's 2 more. Like, don't fuck with our shit.
First and foremost, getting back to that, I didn't mention that before, but the midi-chlorians was like pissing me off. That was some dumbass shit.
What did Akins say? Akins, if you're still here, that comment you made in our group there when we were discussing Star Wars was perfect. You said it was like Star Wars was fantasy up until they created the midichlorians, which then you could quantify it, and then it became. I butchered what he said, but it was awesome. It was a perfect explanation. I agree. Like the whole like midichlorian count and blah blah. It's like we don't need any of that. Like that's garbage.
It was nothing even spoke about to bring up something like they made up that fact that Anakin might have been conceived like Jesus, like God. He didn't have a dad that was of this earth or of this world or something. And I thought that was a push of it. I mean, it's again, like, I think the story of Dune and Paul Atreides has something to do with like the second coming of Christ from what I gathered.
Yeah. Star Wars definitely, it's funny because Star Wars guys try to say that Dune stole from Star Wars, but Dune was made like decades before, like in the 60s before Star Wars ever came out. Like Star Wars took from Dune.
Yeah, but I mean, like Star Wars didn't have like, I mean, I guess that a father and son set up there, but I never got the religious take until the midi-chlorian thing, and then he just came about. And I was like, come on now, we don't need others. Like that wasn't how it was supposed to be. You're like, they just started messing some things up from there, and too many, George Lucas going back to when he did the original movies and then made them in the special movies, special editions. He fucked up so much stuff, and then continued on that mantra and 1, 2, and 3, retelling a story that I thought he had this story written 40 years ago.
I thought so too. I that's what I thought the whole thing. I was like, oh, don't we have books already that he's just going to make these movies that already kind of tells us what's like?
That's what I thought. So and he said, I couldn't make that movie because the technology wasn't there. So he made 4, 5, and 6. And then he went back and rewrote those. And when he did the special editions, he took out the Greedo scene. He made Anakin, took out the old Anakin and put the new Anakin in as the Force ghost, which I was like, what are you doing? That's not how Obi-Wan isn't young again. Like I didn't get that whole why they were doing that kind of stuff. And that was just a dumb thing to try to connect those movies because I think he messed with too much stuff. And then again, you never saw Force Ghosts in 7, 8, 9 or 1, 2, and 3 again. That's kind of like one of those things that was one and done. So, and he didn't hear midichlorians mentioned in 7, 8, 9.
It's true.
No one was
That's
testing
true.
Ray.
Yeah,
So
that's
like,
true.
so I don't really. Again, I think he made too many. Try to get too detailed in a story that for your imagination. Again, I'm not as much of a reader as I am a. I like to watch the TV, watch the movies, but I can imagine what Anakin was like 1, 2, and 3 until he fucked it up. You know, like he made too many details and didn't let us imagine what it was going to be. And so what I'm hopeful is that starting the slate off, what's next for Star Wars? Wipe the slate clean, maybe with new storylines like they're doing 1,000 years in the past, a Mando story, Ray story. But you know, if you want to start the franchise fresh, maybe like I said earlier, Sebastian Stan, make a new Luke, make a new Leia, and retell the original trilogy, but cut it down to 1 or 2 stories, and then just go off in a different directions.
Yeah, I'd go see it. So, because I love the original 3, so I would definitely go see it.
But I like a remake. But no, think about it. Total Recall, RoboCop, all sucked as remakes.
Yeah.
So should they remake it, or should they just tell a new story with a new Luke Skywalker?
Yeah, I mean, I think A, you can tell some stories, like you said, from 1,000 years prior, and then I think you should probably just maybe you go ahead 50 years, 100 years, and just start a new. You know, it's not you have the established lore and you maintain that, but you have a brand new storyline with new characters that we're introduced to. Like, give the next generation their original 3.
Yeah, it's our the generation after us, or maybe the generation now like Noah, has Star Wars games that have a lot of stories that can be told on the big screen. But I don't know as many of those characters, and I don't hear as many of those characters as maybe they know. So that's my concern, is that going back to sports, I live near a lot of Bills fans, right? They lived the era of the 90s, Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas. Now they had to wait till they got the Josh Allen era, right?
Yeah.
So it's a different story, but not going as well, but it's they're pretty prolific in regard to a team, but they're not in 4 Super Bowls a year like they were back then. So it's a new story, but it kind of stinks when you love the old one and now you got a new one that you got to kind of dig into.
As I said with anything with MCU, like if it's good, people will get on board.
But that's what I'm saying. Like no one's really got on board with anything with Star Wars as of yet. The original diehards like me love the original movies and will continue to watch it as they can and try to consume all that content. But I haven't heard anybody that's like, oh, this new game and this new character, Jimmy Papatz, is the greatest Jedi, is the greatest Jedi of all time. Like he's the new Josh Allen, he's the new Ben Roethlisberger, he's the new who's oh Jesus, Pat Mahomes, Tom Brady. Like there's nobody that I'm hearing about. So
yeah,
maybe in the future that'll come about with this franchise. I think there's plenty of opportunity. They're in the right hands now with Dave Filoni, with Disney, overall, because the money's there, but they have to minimize how much they let out, and they have to try to tell a better story.
I will say though that supposedly like the next trilogy is being show run by Kathleen Kennedy, who's only made disasters in the franchise.
But Filoni's supposed to be the creative arm of that.
So we'll see. Yeah. So no, I as well, like I said to start with, and we can finish this here. I have so much love for the original 3 that even when things have been bad for a long time, whenever something new comes out, I still always give it the benefit of the doubt and give it a shot because of my love of the original 3. So if they start more movies, like I'll definitely go and check them out. Yes, Noah's right. Kathleen Kennedy needs to be fired. All caps. But no, this was I enjoyed this chat. This was fun. Noah, thanks for contributing. All those that joined us tonight, thanks for jumping on. Again, we're going to be Again, we're going to be gone for 2 weeks because of the holidays, as I'm sure most of you will have things on the holidays. JP and I will discuss what our next topic will be to discuss, but that will be in the new year. But otherwise, JP, why don't you take us out?
Well, I want to show off one thing that I found as I was trying to Super Nintendo Empire Strikes Back.
Empire
game.
Strikes Back. Oh, you got to get that
I
graded
think
now,
the
man.
box and the original game is in here. I'm
Yeah.
excited on that shit. So always believe in yourself. Star Wars does not suck. You suck. And we'll see you guys on the next. Peace out, everybody. We will see you on the next whatever it's going to be. Peace out, guys.